A quick note before we begin. During this episode, there's a lot of construction noise in the background, so I apologize for that. If there's a bang, now you know why. Hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome back to Philosophy of the Barber. Today's guest is Josh Craggy, the owner of Lucky's Barbershop in Concord and Portsmouth. He is a veteran barber of 20 years, New Hampshire native, and a graduate of Michael's in the year 2000. Welcome, Josh.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad to finally get you on the podcast.
I'm so glad to be here.
So, I think we'll start with first things first. How in the world did you decide that barbering was for you?
Well, I don't know if it was that easy of a thought process. At the age of 12, I was visiting my father, and typically growing up, when I was with him, he would bring me to the barbershop. And it just happened to be a particular Saturday morning, pretty early, probably around 5:36. We went to the shop, and it happened to be pretty busy, and it was beyond the amount of time that he would like to wait. So returning back to his apartment one hot Saturday afternoon, no air conditioning, it was like around 100 degrees in there. He pulled out a pair of old clippers that he can't remember if he got in the military or if he picked up to give haircuts to his German shepherds that he used to have, but he made me give him a haircut. And from that day forward, I was 12 years old. I was just so completely enamored and impressed with how cool and how simple the process was of turning on a pair of clippers, and the fact that what it could do, and the hair that could be removed, and the fact that it would grow back, and just the design, everything. There was just so many simple elements, but that day forward. So I guess that was where initially it started. So I guess that was a decision that was made for me. I wasn't given a choice in that matter. He told me that I could do no worse than him, and he couldn't see the back of his head. So that's where that started. And for the next, probably 7 or 8 years, every week was giving family members and friends of friends haircuts, and from bowl cuts to shaved heads to trying to do designs. I mean, there was, there was no tutorials, or there was no education or information available, so it just kind of winged it. And I mean, thankfully, I don't have a real intact memory of a lot of those haircuts, but that's kind of where it went from 12 to 19 or 20. And I had a couple people in my life that had mentioned to me, that whole, what are you going to do with your life? At that point, I'd been out of school for a couple years, and I had already driven across the country and packed my bags and tried moving out west and come back to this side of the country, and couch surfed a few different places. And I was living downtown Concord in a big Victorian house with half a dozen friends. I was working downtown Concord, and I was just convinced that living a life, hanging out with your friends and just doing the things that you wanted was, I guess, complete freedom. And it's not wrong, but I guess I wouldn't say there was a purpose. However, I wasn't really looking for a purpose either. I mean, I was more than comfortable with the life that I had chosen and was living. But there was two people in my life that over the course of 6 months gave you one of those, like, so what's next kind of thing. And instead of thinking that it was a thoughtful conversation, it kind of felt objective, or trying to figure out my life for me, especially when I thought that I was happy doing what I was doing. But I guess maybe they had some I don't know, they could see something that I couldn't at the time, and they mentioned, like, why don't you, have you ever thought about cutting hair for a living or being a barber? And I said, no, actually, strangely enough, it had never crossed my mind. I had one set of yellow clippers from, like a department store like Ames that had been with me for many years, and that seemed good enough. In the fact that even growing up, going to a barbershop the first dozen years of my life, I guess I just had never viewed or thought of it as a way to make a living or to provide for yourself or others. And the first person that mentioned it, I just thought it was the craziest idea and kind of put that notion away. And then a handful of months later, another friend and roommate mentioned it again, and I said, what's with all this talk about this, that, and the other? And he said, well, you seem to love it. You cut hair every week. What, why not? And I said, that just seems crazy. I said, isn't that a job that just older people do? And he laughed, and he goes, no, that can't be the case. And then we thought about the shops that we knew. There's only 4 or 5, and I think the common age at that point was probably over 65. And then we both kind of laughed, and he said, I guess you got a point. And then he rebuted what he said after, well, they must have been young like us at some point. I said, geez, I guess you got a point. I thought back, and I remember getting my hair cut at the shop I went to as a kid, and there was always photos on the wall of the barber's children. And I do remember dynamically saying one time, overhearing that, that it's a good life, that was able to provide for his family and for his children and provide them with education, and that was enough for him. And I remember thinking back to a kid, hearing those conversations, and it kind of, at that time, at least, it felt like growing up, a child's place in a barbershop was, you didn't speak unless spoken to. So I definitely, I took in a lot. But, I guess so. I said, geez, I guess you got a point. And so I looked up in the phone book, which was in Concord, New Hampshire, and there you go, under B for barber, and there was no barber schools. There was a half a dozen, maybe 5 or 6 barbershops total. But there was a state board of barbering, which still is today, and that's located in Concord for the state. And I called up. This was 1999, and probably summer of '99, I think. And they said, yeah, we don't have any schools. It's not a state-run program. It's 1,500 hours. However, there's nowhere you can go to get that. You could go out of state. I believe Massachusetts, I think, was 1,000. They had a couple schools in Quincy and Worcester. Maine and Vermont at that time, I'm not sure if they had closed their schools for the time being, but you couldn't even go out of state, get an education, at least at the time, and then come back and perform the duties. There was probably 5 or 6 barbers total in Concord. I made a phone call, I think, to the barbershop that I grew up going to, and they weren't looking for help. They didn't need it. There was no demand for more barbers. And so that thought process, I guess, kind of went away. Then it was only a couple months later where I was getting ready to go to work one morning, and I think I had the TV on, and WMUR, I think, was on, and I overheard a commercial for a school in Manchester, which is not there anymore on Elm Street. But they had, I think, a little advertisement. They were now accepting enrollment for a future barber course, and all of a sudden those conversations with my friends came crashing back in. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to grab a pen in time. I missed the number, went back out of my head. Another week or two later, I heard the commercial come on. I ran, grabbed a pen, and made a phone call. And I didn't know I wanted to cut hair. I wasn't convinced by any means that I wanted to be a barber. I didn't know much about the history of barbering. I knew that barbers were kind of always existent, kind of every nook and cranny of earth that I had been to, which at that point had been a few places. But there was no love affair with it. I didn't know enough about it. And I eventually went down and I visited the school, and they said, this is the first time since 1977 that a barber school in the state of New Hampshire would be putting barbers through a curriculum and graduating them. So, between 77 to 99, you either had to be apprenticed or come from out of state. And so think about the generational gap there that you had of barbershops closing or people retiring or people passing away, and nobody really to carry that torch. And I still didn't see the impact of what it had on society and what it would have on myself. But after a handful of visits and conversations, I don't know, sitting here talking to you, I remember having complete trepidation, and almost, it sounds funny, but I remember shaking hands and signing the piece of paper, deciding I was going to do this. And I almost felt in a weird way like I was giving in to being an adult or making a big decision. I guess in many ways, growing up, having a mindset of kind of swimming against stream, that I was just kind of joining the rest of the fish, by picking something or just doing something. And I've never, I mean, still to this day, I've never done anything that I haven't wanted to do. But after careful consideration, it's funny, I almost thought to myself that I had said, you know what, I gave it a shot, I thought about it. I've given myself enough time to educate and think about this, and I think I thought at that point going into that last conversation, the last visit at the school, that I was not going to carry on. I was not going to move forward with it. And when the admissions agent said, so what do you think? In my head, I said no. And in my mouth just blurted out yes. And I remember shaking hands going, oh my God, what did you just do? And it sounds funny. Maybe it sounds crazy, but I didn't go to college. I wasn't a good student. I didn't care for academia. I mean, I've always tried to educate myself in many ways, but I think I learned a lot through music, through friends, through culture, through traveling is where I got my education. So little did I know that saying yes and shaking hands would change my entire life is an understatement. And that's where the journey began. And it was supposed to start in the fall of '99. And the school was going through some transitioning. This was a new program, setting the curriculum up at the state. And it got pushed back a few months. And I think we started, if I remember correctly, it got pushed back from October to January of 2000, I believe is when we started. So that's a shorter version. If you've ever been in my chair, I could bore you to death with more details. But that's kind of like the lead up from, that going to the barbershop that morning, my old man not having patience to get a haircut, 100 degrees, and there's a third-story apartment over a little convenience store, forcing me to cut his hair with these set of clippers that he used to shave his German Shepherds down with. That's to a conversation where somebody said, hey, what are you going to do with your life? And I found it to be wildly offensive at the time, but thankfully, I guess they had some insight that I didn't see. So
I feel like most people, when they're young, eventually have that kind of reaction when somebody asks that
question.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't know.
How dare you ask me about something that I don't know the answer to?
I would never want to project my thoughts or feelings or tell anybody how they should live their life or what they should do. But looking back, I guess it was probably out of thoughtfulness and love and care, and that they, I guess, saw something. They when I didn't even see it in myself, they saw something that I enjoyed. So I'm very thankful for that. Very thankful.
So I appreciate that you touched a little bit on what the context of how New Hampshire was at the time that you decided to start your journey as a barber. When you got out of barber school, had the climate changed at all from when you started, or did you kind of go into that giant question mark?
Yeah, it was interesting. So my class was really interesting, and I guess not only there was no precedent for the state, but also for the school, and I'm very thankful. My instructor, her name was Sarah, and she really truly believed in the trade of barbering, and she really advocated for the fact that it needed to return, that it needed to be nurtured, that it needed to be reinstilled into all the communities that had been lost. And she believed in us, and I was thinking about her the other day, and she was just so passionate and driven by hair and the hair industry, cosmetology, barbering, and she was so motivated and dedicated and outspoken, and she really advocated for the people, and she really advocated for the profession. And I 2 days ago, I was thinking a lot about her and how much it meant to me, her drive really to push us to expect more of ourselves. And once again, where you didn't see it in yourself, to have somebody else be a guiding light and force is it was fundamentally so strong. And going through school was difficult. We didn't have many customers or clientele, and you could only give so many haircuts. There was 4 people who signed up. 2 of the 4 were full-time. 3 of the 4 were there throughout the program. 1 did not complete. 1 fella drove himself an hour and a half each way, but he worked nights and he had a young child. So I guess technically it was part-time. He was there every day, but it took him about, probably an extra 6 months or so to do. But when we all completed the program, it was like, what happens now? We had time and hours on our belt, but we didn't have, like, I admire so many people that come out of barber school today, so many haircuts and so many, I mean, obviously you have minimum requirements you have to do, but, we would go around to fire departments, gyms. We'd make out flyers, we'd put them on Elm Street. We'd go to the youth detention centers. We would try to set up programs with the homeless shelters. We would try to do the food pantries. Anywhere we could try to put the word out that we were looking for people to come get haircuts. The VA and all those organizations were very helpful, but even then it was really hard to organize to get people in the chair. And so, we did the best with what we had, and I think because we had a lot of confidence and support behind us, we felt pretty good, but little did I know coming out of school that there was an entire world that I was unaware of. And just like anything, you now, when it's time to apply that, you quickly learn that school and education serves its purpose, but it's not its entirety of what happens next. And I went around to a couple shops up in the Concord area. Like I said, I think there was 5 total, and none of them were hiring. And I think, one place, the place I grew up, I think they weren't, they didn't, it was a 2-chair shop, and I think it was one person was kind of full-time, one person was part-time, and they didn't need more. Another shop I walked into, unfortunately, the gentleman working, I think he couldn't really see beyond my appearance and didn't care to have too much of a conversation about even hiring a new barber. And the other place, which eventually ended up working, at the time, the guy who took over the barbershop told me I should go work in a salon that almost tried to push me away from working in a barbershop, which I found to be very confusing. But I had my hopes and dreams, I guess, at that point, set on, being a barber and working in a shop. And living in Concord, I wanted to work in Concord. And so I just kept pushing. I just kept calling, just kept stopping by. And eventually I landed myself down on Park Street, which is now American Barber Studios. And when I started there, it was in the winter, I guess it would be that started in the beginning 2000, and then it was that winter, I guess the end of the year 2000, that got a phone call from the owner, and basically had my phone number and had multiple phone calls that I'd called, and still to no avail. Wasn't looking, didn't need the space, wasn't hiring, and got a phone call, said, "Hey, what are you doing right now?" I said, "Nothing." And I was working, through barber school, I worked full-time delivering pizzas. And so I was doing that full-time in school nights. So I was going to school during the daytime, and I continued to do that even after getting out of school. And I'd got my permit, but I hadn't found a shop, and I knew I wanted to work in a barbershop. That's in my heart of hearts, that's what I wanted to do. So I got that phone call one snowy morning. Somebody didn't show up. Said, "Can you be here?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "How long?" I said, "Let me take a shower, grab my stuff, I'll be right over." And that's how I got my foot in the door. And I think within, it was within a couple of weeks, it just went from being like a shift here or there to one of the barbers ended up, the more I showed up, the less the other barber, I guess, continued to show up. And so once they left, I was invited to be on full time, and there was 4 of us, and I was, 19, 20 years old at the time. And then there was 2 barbers in their 70s, and then the barber, was the owner, was, I don't know, had to be early 30s probably. And it was a cool like dynamic. It was almost, I guess, not quite, but almost 3 generations, I guess, where the lower 2 are pretty close, but far enough apart where we really, for a number of years, had a really special dynamic. Working in this great old shop downtown that had a lot of history. It was the 3rd building in its location. It had been in its current form since 1920. The 2 prior ones had burnt down. White's Opera House. I mean, a lot of history in Concord. It's near the State House, so it was a really cool place, and it was a beautiful shop. And I learned specifically those first 2 years. I think I learned more just listening and watching and picking up from my fellow barbers than I could have ever imagined. It will always hold a special place in my heart. And that's how it got started. For 6 months after that, I worked delivering pizza. So I worked, like I said, came on pretty quick, the full-time thing. And then I was working days and nights. And it was that first 4th of July that I got thrown a key and said, hey, usually close the shop up, or I'm not here, or whatever the case may be, but you're going to be the only one here this week. Shouldn't be that busy. It's 4th of July. Here you go. Yeah, okay. Geez, I mean, I was nervous, Obviously, I had some haircuts under my wings at that point, but little did I know, and I'm, as you probably can see, a bit of a long-winded human, but I look back in that that 4th of July week, there had to be 10, 11 people there, and I just, I could feel the sweat coming down my head. I don't even sweat. I couldn't believe it. But you know what? It was stressful. It was scary. It was wild, but they all sat and they all waited, and they were all so cool. And I think they were just happy to get a haircut and thankful. I mean, they were, probably on vacation and hanging out, and I just did one by one, and I took my time. And if you've ever met me or ever been in my shop or otherwise, you know that the clock is not always my friend. I take my time. I probably talk more than I cut hair, but I've really I never want to rush a service with a client. They deserve the most. And so, yeah, that 4th of July week, I cut hair, and everybody came back, and the shop was still standing. It hadn't burnt down, and that was I mean, boy, that was remarkable for myself. That felt like, I don't even know if accomplishment is the right word, but just the fact that I made it through the week. I was so happy, and I was so impressed, and I was so passionate and driven that I was like, boy, if I could do that, I could do anything. And
I feel like there's a legacy in that particular location of trial by fire.
Yeah, I mean, so the shop had, I won't bore you with all the details, but the shop had not that many owners over the years, and the owner had only had it for, I think, maybe 2 years, 3 years, and had really remodeled the whole thing and really restored a lot of its beauty back to it. And the barber that he bought it from still worked there, worked part-time. I think he worked still 5 days a week, but he was there usually around 6 a.m. and was gone by 10. And it was, I think for a lot of us, there was a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of excitement, and there was a lot of, I mean, the industry as we know today is it's beautiful, it's booming, it's ever growing, but it was dynamically different back then. So I think it was something special, I think, to be able to have that wisdom and that knowledge to be passed down from generations before us, and to be and to habitate within the confines of a wall of so much experience and stories and just legacy within those walls. Really, I think I just absorbed it all, or the best I could, Yeah, so and I continued on for the next 8 years there. And a lot of people came and went, but it was really remarkable. I'm very thankful for my time working down there on Main Street. It was great, really. Yeah, I mean, it was special.
What made you finally decide to venture out on your own?
I never wanted to own my own barbershop. I had zero interest. And not for lack of responsibility, because I feel like I've always tried to work hard, even more so today on myself and my surroundings. But it got to the point, so the owner wanted to open up a barber school, and I thought that was incredible. I mean, he was dynamically impacted by his instructors of the school in Maine, and that he went to, where he's from, and I know that the folks that taught him left a very they impacted him in a dynamic way that for years and years said, oh, I want to do that. I want to open up a school. I want to I want to push forward and carry on and do that. I always thought that was a great thing. Even 8 years in, what's that, into like late 2000s, our industry was still dynamically lacking in barbers. They just weren't around.
Like 600 barbers in the state at the time or something?
I bet I didn't know 15. You know what I mean? If there was 600, geez, they might have all voted 2 or 3 times. I don't know. That was, because, most communities had a barbershop and there was a barber there. And it was really wild. But he wanted to open up a school and had bought a piece of property, I believe, if I remember correctly, that had been deemed condemned by the city, and had this, whirlwind of an idea, like many other ideas. And, once he'd put his mind to something, it was like a freight train. You couldn't stop it. And I like that. I a lot of times think the same way. But I think the city really put the boots to it and was like, hey, this isn't going to happen unless you completely rebuild this thing from the ground up. And understandably so. I think probably the cost at the time probably outweighed the ambition. So he said, literally just one day, and prior to that, for a couple of years, he had stepped away, and I had sublet the barbershop and was running the barbershop for close to 2 years. And he had many different, adventures and side businesses and property and hobbies and things. And so it was really good. It really, up to that point, 6 years of being a barber, then those final 2 years of running the shop and subleasing the business and, treating it like your child. It gave me a deep devotion and appreciation for the trade, but also for the building of the business. And then one day he showed up and just said, hey, check it out. Going to do the school at the barbershop. I said, oh, that's awesome. Like, how are you going to do that? Where are you going to put the classroom? He's like, what do you mean? It's right here. And I go, well, there's not very much room down here. He said, no, it's simple. The shop will close and we'll just do a school here. And I said, I guess I'm not understanding what you're saying. So where's the shop? Because no, the shop's here, but the barbershop as a business will close. And I said, well, what about all the people? And he said, well, that's fine. They'll just come to the school. And so I just said, well, what if they don't want to get haircuts by students? And I said, oh, Josh, you're thinking too much about it. Just don't worry about it. We'll go through. We'll get you an instructor's license. It'll be great. And I just straight up, I just said, listen, I think your ambition is incredible, and I would never want to relinquish anyone's dreams, but I'm already kind of living in this dream right now. I'm living my dream, and obviously you have your dream, but I don't want to be a barber instructor, and I don't want to work in a school, not because I don't love the trade, or I'm so happy and comfortable in the setting that I'm at now, and that at that point, 8 years into your career, you start to feel, hopefully confident, and you've developed relationships and compassion, and a lot of heartfelt time and work has been put in. And I guess I was worried that was all going to be lost, and I didn't want to also force that upon the customers. Just my opinion. I guess it didn't feel like fair not having an option. So we had a couple conversations, but over the course of literally, I think it was less than 2 or 3 days, we had it was clear that we weren't on the same page. And it was made aware to me that I guess at the end of the day that it wasn't my business. So my thoughts and decisions, I guess, only carried so much weight. And, I guess you have to respect that. I was under somebody else's business, and their thoughts and wishes and orders, I guess, is people have to do what's best for them. But I instantly was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I've never been one I don't want to do, you have to follow your heart, right? And so, instantly, it was made aware to me that in order to continue to, I guess, what in my best opinion, serve the population, the public, and the people I knew, I was going to have to find somewhere to be able to do that. And I didn't know what to do. I was lost. I never wanted to own a business. I didn't want to own a shop. I just wanted to show up and cut hair. And I guess even though I didn't own the business, being that I was running it and subleasing for the last couple of years. I mean, I guess I had those feelings, those thoughts, and I think I had learned a lot. And I guess didn't even realize I was really doing it, already. And so I guess in return that, I don't know, I don't think it was intentional, but I guess I had been groomed to fashion in that manner to do so, So I said, well, geez, I guess I've got to find a place. And out of respect, you never want to step on anyone else's toes. I didn't want to be across the street or next door. I wanted to be in my own location. I wanted to set up my own thing. I wanted to build a shop and do something that I guess was, remarkable in its own form and in some ways different. And so after looking for it at a couple places, I literally saw an ad in the Concord Monitor. And it said, I think the space at the time before remodeling was 900 square feet, office space available, phone number. That was it. It couldn't have been more vague. And I called the phone number and I showed up and it was an office. It was an office with carpet and wood panel walls and a drop ceiling that you could touch, without even barely getting on your tiptoes. And it looked awful. It was, all the ceiling tiles were brown from smoking cigarettes, and it was just an office. It was an insurance office. It was many different offices. But I the second I walk into anywhere, I don't know why, but ever since I've been a kid, and maybe it helps with cutting hair, but I could envision, I could see this vision in my head of essentially what the shop looks like today. And the thing though that really that sold it for me is I climbed up in the corner on this little small ledge and I pushed up one of those gross old brown drop ceiling tiles, and I could see the ceiling was 3 feet higher, 3.5 feet higher, I think to be exact. And I was like, what is up there? And it was a tin ceiling, and I am just, I adore old architecture and buildings and just the quality and the craftsmanship that go along with it. And that small little corner of a tin ceiling is what sold me. It sounds funny, but it's the vision of being able to see it. And I said, oh, that's what won me over. Little did I know that I probably saw the 6 inches of tile that was actually in good shape that that didn't need complete remodel. Actually, you can't even see that ceiling anymore. There's a soffit built over it. However, that's what won me over. And like I said, that was within, I would say, probably 2-3 days maximum of having those multiple conversations about, what are you going to do next? Going to open a school. I don't really want to do that. I think you should reconsider. Nope, this is how it's going to be. Go to bed. Next day, did you have time to think about it? I did. I still feel the same way. Do you? Yes. Okay. That night, call, person shows up, opens the door, see the tin ceiling. Boom. I want to do it. I want to rock and roll. Let's go. Let's get it moving because, I think the school wanted to come together fast, and I just didn't want to be left high and dry. And I guess, like I said, it's not that the option wasn't there for me to continue in one aspect of this trade, but it's just it was not the position that I wanted to move forward with. I wanted to continue to work with the customers one-on-one like I am still today. And so that next day, I was very upfront, and I said, hey, this is the deal. I just want to let you know I'm very forward. I would never talk behind your back or lie or just mislead anybody. So, and I said, I really wish you'd reconsider. And I said, I signed a lease last night. This is the case. And I figured for that, matter that, for all I knew, could have packed my suitcase and hit the road. However, being that, like I said, I was still running the shop, I think it was very beneficial to both of us to continue to do so in that fashion and manner while we both essentially needed each other. One, to keep the doors open, to continue generating a stream of revenue for the business, and then for my future shop. But the one principle that definitely has held true is that I wanted to make sure that, and hopefully this is long after I'm dead and gone, that hopefully my barbershop, much like the one I worked at, will continue to live beyond me. But I've always wanted people to know that no matter at what cost or weight, I will do whatever is within my power to make sure that they don't ever have to face a situation where they will show up to work and not have a business or a position to work in, and that the customers will always have a place to go to. So opened up. That was, over a dozen years ago now. And eventually the shop plan changed, and I guess as I know it today, that a new building was erected into the place of where the school was going to go, so that fortunately the shop didn't have to close, which was great to hear that that history, that legacy was able to carry on, because that was another part of it. Me excluded. Even though it would have been cool as a school, there was just so much dynamic history of it being a barbershop. It made me sad to think that it wouldn't carry on that legacy, but it still has to this day, and I hope it's doing well. It's a special place. But yeah, opened up, Lucky's a dozen years ago, and boy, it's evolved, it's changed, it's incredible. I mean, I guess it's always been a place, I think, hopefully known for hard work and an openness to communicate with each other and with the customers, with the community. But I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and it's, barbershop, I guess, it has a much broader definition to me than I think a dictionary would define. I think at this point in the game, it's well beyond the haircuts. I believe fully in myself and the quality of my coworkers and barbers that can put out really a beautiful, incredible piece of artwork, a service to the customers. But I find that the dialogue and the drive and the customers and the people I meet today has gone beyond just doing a good haircut. As we know, this day and age, with multiple barber schools and so many barbershops emerging and continuing and staying open and really supplying our state and every community, really all over the world, with great haircuts, I think that we've carved out a space for people to feel welcome, to feel safe. And maybe not everybody puts that same amount of thought or emotion into it, but I find the value for me at this point that the cutting hair is far from monotonous, but it's almost become second nature to the quality of the conversation. And maybe that just comes with time and confidence. I feel like obviously it's number one, you need to maintain and give that service to your customer, and you need to give them what they want. That's the most important thing. But I've received more educations, more dynamic, more love, more thoughtfulness than I could have ever imagined. Like I said, I was more of a, I guess, scholar of life and living and experience than books, and living vicariously and through people and learning. I mean, I've never been to Alaska, but I've cut 100 people's hair who have, and you learn a lot about things that you don't know, places you haven't been, lifestyles, everything really. I mean, it's a human jeopardy. It's the dynamic it's interesting, it's incredible, it never lets you down. And to think that I have friends who will have student debt well into their years, and some of them for an education that they never utilized. I mean, I couldn't begin to tell you how many degrees I've learned from standing behind a barber chair. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but doing semicircles for 20 years, I mean, I'm far from an expert on anything, but I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned a lot about people in doing so, from listening and asking questions. And it's a journey for sure. It's, hopefully when I look back, not only the quality of my haircuts, but the quality of the conversations and the people you meet I've always been very fortunate to have a high caliber, in my opinion, but I feel like it's constantly elevating. And for that, I'm thankful. And we obviously live in a very dynamic climate as we're speaking today. And I think that it's more important than ever to advocate and share and ally yourself with people who not only feel the same way you do, but also to have those conversations, have those difficult conversations, have those, I guess, and maybe we have the ability to dial in with a lot of people that I know if it wasn't for barbering, I would never have come across in my life. It just, unfortunate or what that may be, but the fact that I've met so many people has really opened up my mind to many things. And so I think it's a time more than ever to embrace each other and to focus and hone in on those things. Right? I mean, I guess we're always,
Well, I think customers are really a great litmus test, especially when struggles occur as to the overall success and knowing that you're doing something correctly, where, especially this year when there are struggles that we've never seen before as barbers and as people, that the responses that you get from customers, even with something as minor as like a price raise, like you get positive feedback when you know what you're doing is right. So whether it's well past time of having to raise your price because things are just crazy, or when it's they know you're struggling and they're more than happy to support you because you are of great value to them.
Yeah, you're right. And I think people show you that. I mean, people have taught me self-worth more than I could have ever taught myself. And you're right. That's a special thing. I mean, I can't tell you the hundreds of hours I lost sleep over raising prices on your services $1 to $2 and just being like, well, there's the end of that ride. No one's ever going to come in your business again. And then you think about those people that for years have been ushering you to raise your prices, which just seems so crazy because you don't go to the grocery store and ask them to charge you more, but they see the value in you as a human. They see the value in your service, in your business. They see the value in your trade, and they see the value of what you offer in your community. And I think that's important. And and back to, I guess, sort of how it started earlier. There's just people that see things in you sometimes when you don't see it yourself. And I think that's really, it's special. It's remarkable. And to know that you have the support of your peers in your community, it makes it feel worth it, right? Because like you said, you want to provide a service. I mean, people work hard. Most people don't have a ton of extra to go around, but like you said, in a time like now, I mean, we're all experiencing many difficulties, and financially and business-wise, when people, even when they have less, they want to give more. That says a lot about their character and the quality of them, because they want things to return to some form of clarity, and they want your business and other businesses to be there when they, you know what I mean? It's an emotional thing for them too, like we're in the business of taking care of people, protecting people, making them look better, right? So it's like that holds a lot of weight, and they want that to be there. They want you to be there to make them feel better when everything else doesn't feel good.
Well, and there's great value in that, where it's when push comes to shove, you really have to evaluate and make your priority list. And the fact that we make probably top 10 in a lot of people's priority lists just by the positive effect that we have on someone mentally and emotionally, having nothing to do with other than superficial appearance, but the connection we offer people as humans has greater value that, in my opinion, is immeasurable than a lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, you these chains, they just can't be broken. I mean, to think that in this day and age there would be people storming stairs of state houses with firearms demanding for you to come back to work it's a wild thought that we even live in a world where that's a thing. However, it just goes to show you that apparently there's people out there that they want certain things.
Well, I think no matter what, in times of crisis and of struggle, you really have to boil down what is valuable to you.
Definitely. What
you need to maintain. And that fear that flares up in people when something that they took for granted, in a lot of ways,
definitely,
suddenly the possibility of it not being there is very real, and that scares some people into rash decisions.
I remember opening that chapter in that textbook 20-something years ago on infectious diseases and skin disorders, being like, this is crazy. Little did I think that we'd be living amongst it. And who would have guessed that barbers would have been at the forefront being like, hey, we got this. Well, I mean, obviously within a certain capacity. I mean, things we can't control, but to have a group of people go, hey, we're going to need you to do this, this, and this to protect the public. And you go, got it. Like,
Well, there's so much information that because we're in the profession, we actually are so aware of how much the public doesn't know.
Oh, hypersensitive. Yeah. And it's, yeah.
That we're like, but we're also at the same time very confident in what we do know.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So that like moving forward, we're like, and I'm sure your customers as well as mine, we're daily educating people on like little things that they just don't know, that we didn't know before we went to school.
Absolutely.
So I think that our position in portraying ourselves in such a way that we're more than happy to educate people puts us in a very good position to help the public overall.
Yeah, and I think they look to you for that guidance. They feel confident, hopefully, and I think they do. They feel confident that you're going to take care of them in their best interests, that you want to protect them. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to people who probably said, hey, this is the first time I've left my house. And you go, for a haircut? And you go, yeah. And you go, geez, like that's the weight of those words. I mean, it's hard to process sometimes. Like you said, I mean, even as barbers, it's just a haircut, but it's more than just a haircut.
Well, and then I would say that unique bubble of time that we refer to as quarantine really had so many different reactions depending on who you are as a barber, in the context of being a barber. Of you had the people who had customers that were like hitting them up trying to get an under the table haircut.
Yeah.
And there are some who have created an understanding, a reputation for going, look, what I say is my word.
Yeah.
That is how it goes. There is no like wheeling and dealing. We're not going to haggle. Like this is how it goes. So in my particular instance, I think maybe 2 people asked for haircuts.
Yeah.
The whole 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I've actively put out there, and is a very consistent trait for myself, that when I say something, that is what it is.
Yeah,
And,
I mean,
like my word is law in my shop.
Yeah, and they've come to respect that and
Correct.
acknowledge and appreciate that.
And I've had other barbers that they have a different dynamic with their customers, and it's a totally different relationship. That got hit up a lot.
Yeah.
And having to explain to people like, look, this is not our choice. Like this isn't
Absolutely.
Time to debate.
Absolutely. But you're right. It goes back to show you that despite the world crumbling down and these health concerns, that people are still like, hey, could you like just give me a quick haircut? And it's like, no, but thank you for asking. Like
I appreciate you thinking.
Yeah,
of me.
yeah. I mean, because at its heart, I don't think it's meant to be. I think it comes from a good place.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting.
But I think, now I'm thinking about it, there was a lot of initial customer shaming from people in our industry at the first few weeks of quarantine, going, wait for your barber, wait for your stylist. Like, don't make a decision you're going to regret. Like, wait for, don't be one of those people.
Which is wild.
And I'm largely quiet on those particular situations. I like to think things through first. But by the time everything was done, I'm like, I'm not going to shame anybody for doing whatever made them feel better in that situation.
Not
like
in a million
everybody
years.
Was like comfort eating. How many people gained 10 pounds over 7-8 weeks? Like what your mind and your body were craving relief in an amazingly stressful situation. Like whatever made you feel better, we can fix. It grows back.
Absolutely. And I say it in the nicest way possible, but what you do with your hair, especially like during quarantine, I don't care. And I mean that in the nicest way. Like, how in the world could I sit there and try to try to charge people on how to cut their own hair or shame them? Like, listen, the world is crazy. Do whatever the hell you want. We'll be here when we get back for it, and we'd be more than happy to see you. And the last thing I'm going to do is tell you how to live your life. I mean, yeah, let it fly. Shave it, grow it long, triple mohawk. None of it makes a difference. Just like get at it. Like if you have some questions or some thoughts, or if I can point you in the right direction, or show you where to get a clipper, or give you a link, I'm more than happy. You know what? because you now are serving a value to those people that didn't come at a cost. You know what I mean? Like for anybody who reached out to you, asked for a haircut, or asked you for guidance, or sent you a funny picture, or hey, how did my significant other do with this, or what do you think? Like, I thought it was funny. Like, I mean, like I said, I don't know if encourage is the right word, but I wouldn't stop a single person from cutting their own hair or having a relative do it, or whatever the case may be. That's not my business. That's not my job. My job is within the confines of the walls of the places that I hold in business. And if you want to come in, I would love to like give you any service that you want. But be it in your own home or life, I'm far from the person to tell you what to do with your hair. Yeah, I did see some of that stuff, and it's like, let it fly. Have fun. I mean, when there's people come in the barbershop, they're like, I'm doing the hair because I wanted to do when I was 14 years old, and my parents wouldn't let me, and I'm like 40 now, and they're like, I think it's great. Like, people are having fun with it. People bring some kind of joy to their life during all this. Have at it. Yeah, it's.
I actually super looked forward to anybody who came in with like a grown-out at-home haircut.
Sure.
Because I was looking forward to the challenge of like fixing something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new canvas, right? Because especially if you're dealing with regulars, you're used to that canvas. So sure, it's nice, that because you know the ins and outs, and you can perform your service dutifully and in a great way. But like to have something new, like
seeing new variables, it's like, ooh,
yeah,
wait, you cut in here like this far?
Yeah, or hey, like, we're experiencing a lot of people that are like, they want to leave it longer. They made it through like the weird time of growing it out. They made it through that like those tough phases, and they go like, geez, I don't know, I've never had my hair this long. Like, can you just trim it or clean it up, or let's try this? Or like, absolutely.
You get to see their real texture.
Sure.
For somebody who normally gets such a high,
beautiful
tight
hair.
fade.
It's funny. There's been people who've been like, you sure you want to cut that? I mean, you got beautiful head of hair here. And like I said, I don't pick the cut. My shears don't. They're happy to do whatever people want. But it's been nice. It's been different. We haven't experienced anything like this. So it's new. It's tough, but it's wonderful in many ways. And there's so much conversation, and people constantly are saying, "Hey, I'm sure you're sick of talking about this." And like I said, I've got so much steam, I don't seem to run out. But no, these are the current events we're living in. I think it's important to talk about feelings and thoughts, and I think that's what community is. That's right. Like, I mean, whether it be the barbershop or a church or local organization or a group of people or something you belong to, people get together to share stuff. If people can't talk and converse, and I really think that we hold a special place for people. And I think it's sad when people, well, I mean, I guess, back to kind of saying earlier, like, you got to be able to listen, and you got to be able to ask questions. And if you enter a conversation with your mind made up already, obviously up to a certain point, but like, how can you learn and grow from that? So I encourage all the conversations that we've been having in the barbershops since reopening, and they're difficult, but people, they trust you. I'm sure in your career, you've had people tell you things that they've entrusted with you, what they've never have with a family member, a relative, a loved one, a significant other. And that, I mean, think about how heavy that is. I mean, for the most part, the last 20 years I've experienced, fairly enjoyable light conversations, but love, death, deceit, I've heard it all. And I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe some people aren't cut out for absorbing that stuff, but like, I feel thankful that people take the time to be able to express those thoughts and emotions with me,
Well, I feel like that's a position that if you are somebody that processes those things in ways of like energy or emotions that are basically passing from one person to another, it's definitely healthy where you have to find somewhere to offload it, because otherwise you start to internalize things, which isn't healthy either. But we are so much a lay therapist.
Yeah.
Like, we're the cheapest hourly rate that people are going to get sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker, but you think, depending what you charge for a service, I mean, I'm sure there's people that spend dynamically more money on many things. I mean, to think the value of what your haircut holds, people put on a new shirt or T-shirt. At the end of the day, they take it off and it goes in the laundry pile. I mean, your haircut you're getting anywhere from, depending on how often people come in, 2 to 6 to 8 weeks, depending on, like, think about, the value of what that is. I mean, that's, in relation to other things out there. I mean, you're correct. It's a very small price. I always joke, it's cheaper than the copay, but we have developed into, I guess, I mean, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us, people thank you for your time, and they always say it's like going to talk to a therapist, or they don't have somebody in their life that they can just be open and forward with without prejudgment or post-judgment, or just, people just sometimes they want to have somebody bend an ear and listen. I mean, I get it. Like, it's a lot. You're right. It is a lot to process. But I always tell them, I go, thank you. It goes both ways. You know what I mean? You paid me for a haircut, but in return, I got to unload on you, and we got to share, and I think usually you walk away with something more than you started with,
Oh, some of my favorite customers that come in, and by virtue of outside of COVID, I always do appointments, so I know how I'm starting my day. I know who I'm looking forward to seeing. It brings up my spirits even more with particular people, because I know that we're going to have great conversations, or I know the things that have been going on in their life that I, can get a continuation of.
Yeah.
So it's great that you can look forward to seeing people. And even before I took appointments, there were a lot of times where somebody will just randomly pop into my head, one of my customers, and I will see them that day. They will just randomly walk in. Love that. And it's great, kind of anticipating that energy that's going to walk into your life that day.
It's cool. I guess I wonder if you try to let people know, but I don't know if, and maybe I try to do my best to try to, like, reciprocate that and vocalize how much I appreciate that in people. Because I want people to know that I hold a high value in them outside of their haircut. And I don't know if everybody has that same thought and feeling. And, like I said, some people it's just a job, it's just a haircut. But I found a couple decades in that I haven't had a single day where I just wanted to walk away from my job or this career. I would be lost forever without it, and I'm forever grateful and indebted to it. But it's beyond what I could have ever anticipated, what it could have been.
I'll agree if you boil it down to what we do daily as barbers, no matter what business you've chosen to take in the profession, where it's like if you're a shop owner or you're a booth renter or you're an employer or whatever, like what we do at our core is definitely something I would never want to go without. But there are certain days when there's an aspect of the profession I could do without. But that's just because there's some things that wear on me.
Absolutely. No, for sure. I mean, I think too, you probably, and I don't know how life was for you before you were a barber, but in some ways, I think people have developed a thicker skin dealing with the public if they maybe worked in a factory or worked somewhere by yourself or an office or traveled on the road where you didn't have a huge amount of people that you were dealing with on a regular basis. I've seen a lot of people come through the shop that could put out a good haircut, but they didn't know how to have a conversation. And for somebody, I guess, ever since I've been a young person, I don't remember having a problem with that. I mean, for me, one-on-one is where I specialize in groups of large groups of people. I'm a wallflower. I don't know why. I'm sure there's many deep-seated issues, but it's, you feel protected, you feel safe, you feel like, I don't know, sometimes you can let the walls down, you let your guard down when you're dealing with people one-on-one. And but I've seen a lot of people have to develop that trait within the trade. And I think that I've had people ask me, like, boy, like, how have you cut that person's hair for so long? Or how did you develop this or that? And I said, well, it wasn't by design. It wasn't some kind of branding or something you signed up for. You've given enough out of yourself, even when you didn't realize it, where people have grasped onto that. And it's not that they couldn't get a good haircut in any other chair or any other barbershop, because that's, there's so many options available today, but people gravitate towards some of those things. And that's what keeps them sticking around and coming back, you know?
Well, it's funny you should mention the whole starting off not really having much of a personality behind the chair, because when I started barber school, by virtue of my upbringing or my time in the military, or like right before I started, I had very much a military bearing or poker face, like
Yeah.
not a whole lot of emotion
Yeah.
shown through unless necessary. So that was something that they had to harp on me on in barber school.
Yeah.
Very much a very thick-shelled brick. But over the last 8 years, a lot of life experience, a lot of growth, a
Definitely.
lot of self-improvement.
I mean, we're
But
all,
I can
yeah.
definitely relate to you where by having a little bit of introspection and recognizing what works for me as an individual, I've been able to put myself in my ideal situation so that I can be the best barber for my customers. That's why I now have my own room, and it is that one-on-one, so I don't have to be a shop manager and worry about all the other things going on while also trying to service my customer.
Yeah.
So it's twofold for me, because as a shop owner, it's all right, my separation allows my barbers to be adults,
Yeah.
to deal with issues at the lowest level and figure it out. And then if they can't, then they can bring it to me.
Sure. Yeah.
So that also clears a little bit off my plate, but then also offering my customers the best experience that I can offer them because I shine one-on-one.
Definitely. Yeah. And, you know, you're able to focus that, your abilities, and, you know, like you said, you're evolving with it. You know, we're all hopefully works in progress. And it's, you know, it's interesting actually, probably think too, maybe in your time cutting hair, that people have grown with you and seen you grow and been part of that change. And that's kind of a nice thing too, you know?
There's a number of customers I invited to my wedding.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Or vice versa. I'm sure people invited you to their weddings, you know? It's bigger than I could have ever imagined. It's, who the hell would have thought cutting hair would bring you down this avenue where, you know, you know, it's I guess it's just something that's been there forever, but I don't know. People might think it's cheesy or corny, and I don't care, I guess, if they do think that. But I know for me, the value of barbering is so far beyond cutting hair at this point. I love cutting hair, and I could bore you to death with all the details why I like it, but that only carries so much weight within the industry, I find, because there are many options available. So, you know, people, you know, when you throw darts, eventually one sticks, and people, once they kind of find that bullseye, they want to stick with it, you know, and they want to keep that going, and that's special. But, you know, I mean, obviously you're thankful for anybody that sits in your chair at any point in time, and I guess you only ever have one chance to make that first impression. So it's unique, you know, because most likely, unless it's a baby, people have had a haircut before. They know what it entails, how it works. Chances are what's going to happen. So word of mouth probably gets them through the door the first time, but it's what you offer that brings them back the second time and many times afterwards, you know.
Definitely. So by virtue of you being in the industry for so long, but also quite a leader in the industry in our area, you've influenced a lot of people to go through barber school over the years. What's usually your advice for anybody that approaches you with a curiosity?
Give it everything you got. Just, you know, like, just, I would encourage anybody to just follow their heart and go through with it. If there's, you know, if it's looks cool, well, it is cool. It does look cool. But if it's just a passing trend or something to make a quick buck or whatever the case may be, well, I wouldn't encourage that. I guess they can do whatever the hell they want. But I have such a respect for the industry and the trade that I would tell people, give it your all. Just like give every single part and piece of yourself to it. I don't know if people feel like that they should have to or they want to, but I know for me it's come back a million times over. You know, it allows you to be artistic. It allows you to express yourself in many different ways. It allows you to be creative in so many facets. You work with your hands. you get to be, or hopefully, pick an environment that is suitable to your wants and your needs. You can be yourself. You can be different. You can look different. You can align yourself with people who have similar interests. You can make an entire career. You can live anywhere on earth, and nobody can take this gift from you. I say gift. Some people might just think that's not the right word. But it was, I guess, I had to make the decision to become a barber, but the gift, I guess, bestowed upon me that I didn't realize the power of it, and the fact that nobody can take that from you. It's in your hands, you know what I mean? And it grows from inside. It's deeply part of my heart and my life, and it's brought me to all corners of the earth, and it's put people into my life that I'm forever thankful for, and it's put me in situations and taught me lessons and valuable things that I would have not attained anywhere else that I could imagine, in a classroom or anywhere else, for that matter. And so I just, if anyone's ever asked me, I fully encourage them to follow their heart and their passion if it's something they're interested in. Like I said, I would never try to discourage anybody otherwise, but I would 100% let them know that if this is just a passing trend, and that's all it is to you, just something to do for now, for the time being, I would assure them that there's many other trades and other jobs out there that could probably fill that void that they're feeling. But I know everybody really that is still cutting hair that I talk to, like you said, there's things in your life. There's going to be times that can be exhausting. That is life. We are humans. We're not robots. But I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think if people are asking you that, and they're confiding in you, and they're interested in hearing what your thoughts are, they've probably already made that decision because they've seen you exemplify certain qualities that they admire and respect and want in their own personal lives. So I guess you probably did something without even knowing you were doing it, showing them. Yeah, go for it. It's the best. It's the guiding light in my life.
I feel like it's such an investment as a career where however little or much you put into it, it'll be magnified, whatever you're willing.
Definitely.
So if you're, just in it for now, then that's what you're going to get from it. If you want it to be and are willing to dedicate your all to it, then that's exactly what it'll give back to you.
Can you imagine when you enrolled in barbershop? I mean, maybe you could, that you could foreseeably do this for the rest of your life, and legitimately, you couldn't breathe, stand, or walk. You can have a career, you can make a living, hopefully there's a point in time in everybody's life where obviously certain financial burdens and restrictions will lessen as the years go on, where, I like I was saying earlier, when I worked at the first shop in Concord, I worked with people who've been doing it over 50 years, and they didn't have any bills. Their kids were well-grown adults, grandchildren are grown. It got them out of the house. They loved to do it. These are people that it was nothing more than it had been a constant factor in their life for so long that they would have been lost without it. And it keeps you mentally, keeps your wits sharp. It keeps you physically moving. There's so many aspects to it that just keep you going. I talked to a lot of people over the years that retire, and unfortunately, you see some of these people go downhill quick because they're not getting out, they're not conversing, they're not sharing ideas, they're not physically moving, they're not, when you remove just those vital parts of your everyday life that are now gone, it leaves a big black hole. And so these, two particular people in my life I adored and deeply cared about, taught me that this was something that beyond your years would give you so much love and life back to you, even when you didn't need it anymore, even when you didn't need to make that paycheck, even when you didn't have those bills over in your head, that it was still something that was still there. And that's special. There's not, I don't know, maybe there is plumbers running around when they're 90 with tattoos of drains and sink faucets all over their face and arms, and just talking about how cool it is, putting PVC glue on fittings. And maybe there is, I don't know. I'd love to meet that plumber, but I don't think that they're as rampant and rabid as they are in our industry, it's shown that there's a deeply, deeply, deeply growing number of people who are, I think, come to barbering as people who are devoted and driven and passionate about many things before they were barbers. And I think that has showed us that it's carried over into this trade. And I think that it allows you to express many fundamental parts of you, of your internal, outwardly as a barber that shine, that other industries and careers and trades probably don't harness. Like I said, I've been doing this for so long. The other jobs I have, they were cool, but they did not impact me in the same way that this has. And I can't imagine, and I'm not too familiar with, even after this many years, people who love and desire to go to work with the same ambition that I have and other people I know,
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, can you imagine when you first start this career that you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life, where we were talking before the show that I am somebody who gets bored very easily.
Yeah.
Like, one of the many reasons that I don't have tattoos is because I cannot commit to something permanently like that.
Sure.
Because I just get bored with it. So that was my expectation going forward with barbering, was like, all right. And there were some physical issues that I had that were like, will I physically be able to do this forever?
Yeah, definitely.
But it turns out, it's fine. Just use different tools.
Good.
But for me, it's like, I'm going to get bored with it because I have a very consistent pattern of my life of being all in. Like, if I want to be in something, I'm to my head, like totally immersed in it. And I will stay that way until there is no other way for me to gain more knowledge with it. So thankfully, there's a couple things in my life that are so widespread and diverse that I can stay interested. One of them is a minor obsession with Disney. But the other one is definitely barbering, where when I find myself getting tired of one part, there's another section of it that I can focus on to reignite my passion for it.
Yeah.
So I've, gone into offering skin services in addition to our normal price list.
Right.
I've just recently started getting into offering color professionally.
Wonderful.
I got my instructor's license as soon as I got my master barber license, like consecutively, so that one day if I needed to use it, I had it.
Yeah.
And I have used it on and off. So it's great to have the diversity to be able to hop from one part of our industry to another when one is starting to get stale. And then with that perceptions change or shift, it really helps you appreciate what was getting stale for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the more knowledge and the larger your skill set, the more options you have available. Like you said, so you don't feel like backed into a corner, And it's nice that you have the ability to call upon those other things when needed, or just to be able to offer them to people. I mean, it's unique to be able to fulfill the power of a haircut or a service within our scope of our industries. Of what it gives to people it's really interesting. You've said it forever. When you look good, you feel good, and that carries out into the world. And being that you can utilize all those tools that you have to enforce that nature on people, I'm sure they're very grateful for it.
Well, I think the thing that keeps me coming back every day is the things that I can offer people to make them feel their best. Where it's like, from the variety of services that I have to offer, it's my favorite ones are the ones that give them such a wow factor at the end that they are beyond what they thought they would feel by the end of the service.
Yeah.
And that's contagious to me.
Oh, definitely. Like you said, you mentioned earlier about, somebody can just come in and just completely change the entire environment. So simply with a hello or a smile. And I don't know, sometimes, like I said, if people realize their abilities to do that, and I don't think it's intentional. But I think it's good. I think we need to be remind ourselves to thank people, not just for their money and their time, but to thank them for what they bring us. It's important, because you know, within society, there can be a lot of things where we're very selfish. Like you said, I mean, it's gratifying to want to make yourself feel better, but in return, it can be a reciprocal duty, having that ability to do so with people. It's just, when I think about like so many decisions and thoughts and things in my head and the way I feel about a lot of different things in the world, I would say that I harness a lot of that energy and compassion through my customers. And, you know, it just having the ability to ask people and to be able to like engage or indulge deeper into those things. It's I don't know where else, you know, I don't know where else I would get a lot of that. I mean, sure, you have the internet and you have a lot of tools at hand to learn about a lot of things, but I mean, I think one-on-one, to me is I absorb it the best that way, you know, personally. And I think then in return, I think you can you keep it moving, that sort of that domino effect, you know. You pay it forward and you pass it on. It's wild. Yeah. I mean, it's funny that the actual physical part of cutting hair, it's not irrelevant. In fact, it's, you know, but I think that, and I guess like you said, like styles are going to change, things are going to come and go. There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of different things that are interesting. And I know I'm fortunate in that regards, where being surrounded by a large group of people within my trade, there's a lot of information in return amongst each other that you can share and learn as well. And it's important to remember, like you said, you know, you give a lot of the people who work at your shop a lot of power and a lot of responsibility because you trust them and you believe in them. And it's an important factor. And much like, you know, I guess, and same in my coming up in the trade, there was, you know, a lot of responsibility from an early day was given to me, and it's special. And I think it's important to remind the people around you that you appreciate them and that, you know, what they do and what they offer for you. The dynamic is large because it's not just you, it's not just your shop. I mean, in regards to, there's other humans with their own thoughts and emotions that make up the dynamic of your business. And I've always said it's much easier to create a better barber than a better person. So if you can, on an entry-level basis, have people surround you that I think have a forward-thinking, open-minded mindset and a knowledge of barbering, that the barbering part will come in time. But I think it's a lot harder to develop some of those skills than it is a mindset. So I think if you can start with somebody, you know, that exemplifies qualities not only that you admire, but that you also yearn to have more of, I think it's important, because I think if you just try to clone yourself, I think that's a dangerous thing. I think that you could easily become stagnant in your technical abilities and in your mindset. So I know for me that I'm continuing to try to surround myself with people who not only think the same, but do think different, and challenge and push those thoughts and ideas. And I find that I value the time. I mean, obviously, you know, we're all wearing masks and keeping distance from each other, but I miss more just time amongst each other, not cutting hair. I miss not being able to embrace customers and friends, whether it be a smile or a handshake or a hug or a pat on the back. You know, for as we know it, those are dead in the current world that we live in. And that, you know, may be a thing pushing forward that may be gone. We're learning to use our voices where our hands and our hearts do not easily recognize and show those things. So I think it's even though we can't see our lips moving as we're amongst each other, I think it's good to vocalize those things. And then I know for me that trying to evolve and be a better person and a better barber and a better person in my communities and a better person amongst the trade, I want to advocate and I want to be there for people, and I want to be somebody that, like you said, they can ask a question or rely on or send a message. And even if they're not a customer, if they're another barber or whatever the case may be, I want to build those bonds. I want to continue to have those relationships. And like I said, growing up for many different reasons, I just haven't felt that kinship to a lot of different things and people. And Lord knows without barbering where I would be, but I'm so thankful for it. It's such a constant factor in my life. It's an ever-present change that I welcome and that I love. But I do miss that closeness, those, like I said, those embraces with people, especially didn't have a haircut. It's with appointments and other things like that, they're wonderful in many ways. But when the days of like just going to ring out or a transaction or a handshake or I don't know what, those, it almost felt like that was like you were sealing the deal, like you were not only saying thankful, but that was like it was closing it, and you were engaged in something special, and that's okay. I guess it's, like I said, it's just the times we're living in. But I do miss that stuff a lot.
The beginning and end handshakes definitely remind me of like going to a church meeting where you have a opening and closing prayer where it's like that's the confines of the transaction or the experience that you're having together. So I have to constantly actively remind myself to not extend my hand to shake somebody's hand.
Yeah, old habits die hard, I guess.
But I love what you mentioned about the barbers you work with, and really when I think about it, it's not like an active thing in my mind until you just mentioned it. But all of my barbers who have been here for more than 2 years now, all of them except for one came to me straight out of barber school, never having worked anywhere else. And that one that had worked other places was my customer before going to barber school.
Love that.
So Love that. It is so important to have, it's a personality connection. You have to be able, it's like having roommates, where you spend so much time together that like you guys have to mesh as people. We can build skills, and we can build on the profession, but if you don't work as a person together, and some people just clash. And,
for sure, definitely.
Obviously anything can work if people are willing to put it in to improve a situation. But if you don't have the maturity, or you're just not in that position in your life yet to be able to fix that, some people just don't work well together. But when you get that dynamic in an environment, it affects the entire atmosphere, and that creates what your shop is to so many people.
You know what? It's you said it right. It's a family. I know in my life, personally, I've spent more countless hours with these people than I did with anybody in my personal life, and you have to have an understanding. I think at work and at home, that's in order for that to be healthy. What that means, how you process it, what you do with it, and stuff, is important, because when these are the people that you work closely next to and you rely on, and you see every day, for some people, obviously, in that atmosphere, you need to make sure that things go smooth, and you, just like any families, they can have their ups and downs, but you need to do your best to try to keep things swimmingly moving forward, because at the end of the day, I always, a phrase I probably use a lot with the folks at the shop is kind of like on the court, off the court, right? So I want to do everything within my power to present and create an atmosphere that makes people feel happy, safe, positive, where they can earn a good living. And I guess not only is my goal is to have them be happy at work for the longevity, you take care of them, you treat them right, you pay them well, so that you don't have that same kind of turnover. But in return, I want the best for everybody around me. And that's something over the years I've realized, when you give a lot more out to other people that, and not wanting anything in return, but I want them to be happy at work so that when they go home to whatever life they live outside of work, that they bring some of that happiness into their home. And then in return, if they can have a little bit extra happiness in their home life, then they can bring some of that back into the barbershop. And I think it's important. And obviously, I'm not in control of any things outside of the barbershop. However, I do my best to try to procure that and want them to know that. And that's something that, I want to continue to work on. But I really love and value, for many different reasons, the people around me. And like you said, acknowledging differences and strengths and weaknesses are very important. But I really think it is like a full encompassing thing that you need to be consistent in your work life and your home life, where they work hand in hand with each other. I think it's important, and I don't think, or I don't know. There's many times in my life where I didn't have both of those things, but when you work on it and you have it and you see it, how could you not want it for other people? And I think you need to harness that, and it takes time, just like anything else. But it is a family, and I'm not saying everybody that. I mean, the way that specifically our barbershops are today are much different than they were years ago, because as it's grown. I mean, it used to be for a long time we had limited staff, we had long waits, we had working 6-7 days a week for years on end, and there's nothing wrong with that. But not everybody feels as empowered maybe as you, and occasionally needs a break from that. And it took me a long time to learn that it's important that people have a life outside of the barbershop. For me, not everybody's empowered by their job, like I was saying before, as I am, and it's a little bit different, but I get a lot of those things out of the barbershop where people in other jobs don't receive. So for me, it's hitting on many different aspects and levels. So, but I always knew that even in my most difficult times, that coming to the barbershop was some kind of sanctuary away from the rest of life, and that kind of checking your drama at the door was a big thing for me. But like I said, growing as a human, I realized that we all have lots of different emotions and things going on. So I want to do my best to be aware of those things and acknowledge them. And it's not the end of the world if somebody needs a day off or has something going on, because I look back and the catch-22 is I don't regret a lot of the decisions I made by putting those extra hours in, because I think it's brought me to where the shops are today and who I am today. So I'm thankful for that. But looking back, there's probably quite a few examples in my life where doing that extra haircut probably would have kept things smoother, or would have missed out on weddings or receptions or traveling or whatever the case may be. So it's important to remember that there is a life outside of your work, but it's taken me 20 years to acknowledge and realize that. But it's important. But like I said, when it's just you what is important to you might not be important to everybody around you. So you need to, the more people you surround yourself with, you need to be aware of that.
Well, I'm constantly learning annually exactly how much you cannot use yourself as a measurement for anyone else. And that's
true. Yeah.
Always has to be a reminder to me. But and that's something that I'm learning through being a shop owner and working with other people. And I will say that, like, how I've run my shop in the past, I don't have any regrets, again, because as you said, those are the choices that led you to who you are and what you know now. So I feel very much the same way, where it's like, all right, I understand why I was running it the way that it was then, and why I made the choices that I made based on what I knew. So you can't fault me for that, because it's like, well, that's what I knew at the time, and so those are how I made my decisions. But it's also acknowledging what you've learned and how you've chosen to implement that knowledge, because you could always choose to not implement the knowledge.
Definitely, for sure.
And stay however you were doing it before. But and we've had very different dynamics. But as you were saying, when it came to the shop being like a family, I think that is a very thin line to walk at a certain point, because it's like approaching that dynamic, you have to be vulnerable for it to not work. Like that has to be a possibility in order to eventually get to implementing that successfully. And when it is successful, it makes a better situation for everyone because everyone is good at communicating and is very open towards one another and allows you to avoid breaking bonds in a negative way. So, when somebody feels comfortable to approach you and go, look, I have a new goal in my life, which doesn't have me here forever, which is like, cool. Like if you're aware of that and they're comfortable enough to tell you that, like that's the dynamic you have, it's great because you can't expect anybody to stay with you forever.
Did you ever find that was a tough pill to swallow?
No, number one, I've never had that personally, but I've been very blessed that my barber Tyler's been with me since he had his permit out of barber school, and he's a local guy, and
wonderful guy.
I am more than blessed to have him here for as long as I have, and for every day moving forward, I am thankful for it. There are people that the dynamic has not always been so open and family and communicative,
Yeah.
so there have been times when, bonds were broken, but I enjoy seeing their faces because they continue to come in and get their hair cut by a barber they did connect with.
That's great.
Which I'm happy that we didn't part ways in a way that made them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
To come here.
I mean, and that's probably one of the true definitions of success, right? I mean, it's not it's a broad phrase, but like, if anyone who's ever come through your doors and spent any time with you, and they've moved forward and moved on and they're happy in their personal lives and stuff like that, hopefully they took something from you or your business or your shop that like helped them execute those decisions and become successful in their own right. Because like you said before, like you can't be the gatekeeper of all this stuff, there's enough hair to go around, and there's like happiness, like I said, it should be universal. I mean, it's not trying to be corny or cheesy, but it's like, Jesus Christ, I mean, this world is so short. Why don't you want to enjoy it? And there's so many things that keep people from being happy and enjoyed it. And there's things that need to be vocalized and fought for, but there are simple things in this world that you want everybody to have. And it's sometimes, like you said, I mean, being vulnerable is, I thought probably for one point in my life was weakness. And in fact, as I've got older, I think it's the opposite. I think it's like a sign of strength. It's like breaking your walls down and opening up yourself for situations or circumstances that only that you do not welcome or don't want or have never experienced. And then what you do with that is it's huge. And it can be devastating or it can be unbelievably rewarding. But to have somebody who, whether it be for a day or a year, who spent time with you, to not want them to take something from that would seem wrong, would feel wrong, and I look back and same thing. I've known people come through the shop and, there's been times where it's been, there's times where it could be travel or location or moving different things or starting shops. Sometimes maybe it didn't end up on a good level, but like at the end of it, I think reaching out and bridging those gaps and opening the communication and learning like, what could I have done better, or where did I go wrong, or where did I fail to communicate, or how can I approach this differently, or vice versa. Those are all important things. Those are all reflections that are important, when you kind of look in the mirror and you want to be proud of what you see, but you want people to have some kind of impact felt, and not that they don't owe you anything, but that they took something, hopefully, that you worked hard for, and they were able to regroup and position themselves into a better place with some of that knowledge or skill set that you gave to them,
Well, and I always try and impress upon anybody that works here at my shop that, being upfront going, I want to know what your long-term goal is. Like, whether it's like straight out of barber school, if you one day want to own a shop, or if you're not ready and you don't necessarily know what your long-term goal is, like, but whenever you are, I want to make sure that we have a connection enough to where you're comfortable to let me know, because I want to help them work towards their goal.
Definitely.
And I don't have the expectation of them being here forever. So if somebody ever wanted to open a shop of their own and, grow away from mine, I have no problem with that. Like, I am more than happy, whether it's a colleague or a barber that's worked here with me or a neighboring shop. If you want that, like, all I care about is, number one, being aware of that. That way I'm not blindsided by suddenly you decided to pull the trigger one day and
Sure.
now I am left in a lurch.
Yeah.
And because that's as much of an inconvenience
For
as a
sure.
shop owner as it is, I feel like, an emotional slight, because we have that connected dynamic where it's like,
Yeah.
you have that personal, like, oh, it's a shot in the heart right there because you didn't have enough respect for me to let me know that that's what you wanted to do.
Definitely. And being transparent, like you said, I think is key, and keeping that line of communication open is key. And I think, like you said, having those early conversations in your situation is good because they know that you have the best intentions for them throughout their career. That's important. I think people want to feel like you've got their back. That you support them in every way, shape, or form. But you're right, and also as a business owner, though, you do have a responsibility to your business, yourself, and your customers, and your fellow coworkers as well to keep things moving. And that can be tough. And there seems to be a steady stream of barbers coming out now, but it's it really is. And like you said, lack of a better word, family. I guess you don't pick your family. I guess you pick your barbers, but you develop those kinships and those bonds, and you take to heart those things. It's a relationship you build. And anytime you see the end of a relationship, it can be tough for people. But I think it says a lot about your character if you still have a relationship and communication with those people. That says a lot about you.
Well, and I feel like that's one of the great things about how the profession has grown, at least since the time that I've been in it, is that it reminds me very much of the camaraderie that I experienced in the military, where it doesn't necessarily matter how much we talk or how many years it's been since we've seen each other. It's if I reach out, you answer. And I find that very much to be the case in this profession, in addition to my prior service.
Yeah, there is a kinship there that I admire in many ways that I see with a lot of some of the younger barbers, and sometimes it's just based on the sheer volume, the numbers of the people that were in their classes with them. I think they developed those bonds early on, and I really admire and respect those relationships that the barbers have, and supporting each other and going to different shops and getting haircuts and stopping by and saying hello or sending a message. And I think those are all really important things, and none of it is, it's not for personal gain or value. It's just because people care, and I didn't have that in my class. I didn't have that early in my career, and many years afterwards. It's something that I've learned through the barbers who work at the shops, and I really admire it. It's like it's just so nice to see people supporting each other for nothing more than just being happy for each other. And I think it's it attests to, like I said, the quality of their nature, of their character, and it says a lot about our trade. There's so many people that you and I are sitting here. Unfortunately, it took this long to meet and have a conversation, but for the mere fact that we're just both barbers, and the fact that we can sit down, and while we're not cutting hair in our daily life, we're still sitting here having a conversation. That says a lot too, But I really I value this trade, and I've seen it provide opportunities for so many people in so many different ways. That somebody was just saying the other day, there was a barber came in from another shop for a haircut, and this is like, I don't even know if it's been a year into their career, and they had a really great career, and they went to school for a long time but something about barbering had caught their attention several years back, and they always wanted to do it. And they finally just said, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this. And within a year, this barber has, upgraded their vehicle, has bought a home, has, and now the monetary things, not houses and cars aren't, that's not the end all be all. But the fact that these are just things that they've worked hard for that they didn't attain in their other career. So not only do they pick a trade that they're happy and they're feeling creative in, but in return, they're also seeing the monetary reward where they can live a life that they weren't able to live. And, it's back to like thinking about where I went to a shop as a kid getting my hair cut. These guys would, the way they talked, like, they'd say, oh, you never get rich, but you'll have a good life, and you can take care of yourself and other people. And everyone has different, I guess, an end game. But at the end of the day, I think a little happiness goes a long way. And I think obviously being able to take care of yourself financially goes a long way. So I think the reward that I, was hearing and seeing this barber tell me the day I was just so happy, so proud for this person that they just felt that they had hit some milestones and accomplishments in such a short period of time as a barber that they had not in a decade of a prior career, So it's nice to see.
Well, it's great to hear and to meet the people that are entering our profession moving forward and seeing that there's a familiar spark in their eye that we could see in ourselves and in each other when we were young in the profession.
Yeah.
Josh, thank you so much for coming and talking to me.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for suffering through all of the construction noises. I'm sure some of them will be picked up for the listeners.
Growth is good. Growth is good. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's really humbling to be able to sit here and just share some thoughts with you. And thank you so much for thinking of me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and we look forward to seeing what's coming up next for you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.